Hello and welcome to episode 18, Kobe, of The Dive.
Loves his
always
numbers.
say that I get excited about the episode number. It's the 18th episode
Always, I said that one time.
of
and
the
it was
year.
funny because
Like
it
you
was
said,
true.
it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it's no longer funny. Anyway, this week we're going to be
Well,
talking
it's
about
still
the
funny.
final week of LCK, MSG acquiring CLG, and also the race for MVP.
Also, 7:15 is going to hit pro play, so we can talk about not only the changes in that patch, but how they're going to affect the pro meta.
We're also going to be talking about the final week of NA LCS. This team's going to be jostling for that playoff seeding and trying to avoid the promo tournament.
Yeah, to quote Papa Smithy, the LCK caster, this is the first time the final week of the LCK has been this epic.
Wow.
3 super significant best of threes leading into what should be our most competitive gauntlet ever. We're recording this Wednesday morning. One of the epic best of threes has already happened. KT played Longju. They 2-0'd, which actually preps KT to mean if they beat SKT, they actually qualify for Worlds with the way the championship points go. But what do you think about the top 4 teams in LCK?
I think they're all awesome. Honestly, though, that series was extremely fun to watch, even though it was a 2-0. Like, especially the first game was definitely super tense because the first game was these 4 tanks and Ash in the back line trying to take it to late game in these late game team fights, and it got extremely dicey, and it was kind of a display of what a lot of this tank meta or whatever that people are talking about, and a lot of the tank items were kind of on display, and they showed that you can definitely win even late game team fights if you have these 4 kind of low damage tanks on your team. Everybody had stone plates, and
I thought it was a pretty well played game. Like, obviously there was a few mistakes back and forth considering
Pretty
KT
bloody
had
game, too.
a 12,000 gold lead like 25 minutes in and still took until 58 minutes to win.
Yeah.
But later on in the game, I thought it was cool how KT kind of adapted to the game state the right way. Like, they stopped overdiving. They actually started peeling with 4 tanks for Ash. Mata was just saving his Braum shield entirely for Twitch
is that an
gameplay.
adaptation to the way the game is going, or just playing better? Stopping the
Well, not necessarily, because I feel like Galio compositions when they're ahead are kind of meant to dive. Just CC the 80 carry, jump on.
But
with
just
Galio.
diving better, that's the difference between, you're talking about over diving, right?
Well,
By definition,
yeah.
over diving is not playing well.
over diving will be playing bad. What I would mean is, by definition, they completely changed. They started peeling for Ash rather than actually trying to just do all the things with initiation. I thought it was just a 50 kill game or something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about is kind of interesting because I think that, like, although it is overall like a lower damage team composition, these tanks bring so much CC that there is a lot of threat onto the opposing team's carries, like if they do mess up, and it allows your carry to like free fire and to be like able to get so much more DPS out than you should be able to in a normal situation. Like if the Ash has this 4-man front line, everyone is protecting him, you have lockets, you have Knight's Vows, you have all these items to actually protect them, then they can put out more damage than they would otherwise be able to do, which I think kind of sometimes makes up for that.
And this is kind of the point that I wanted to bring up with this, was that in past seasons and stuff, I've always had this feeling that full tanks will get outscaled. Full tanks are super good for team fighting and all the way through the mid game. But once you get to literally full items and everybody is fully built, champions that aren't bringing any DPS do get outscaled.
Yeah.
Because they actually get melted. The penetration and those items kind of take over when you're full builds like this. Have we? This is just a little bit of evidence here, but bringing up the point of how far have we gone in buffing up tanks and tank itemization? Have we gotten to the point where they actually, even in the very, very, very late game when it's full items, are they still getting outscaled? Like, very clearly, you can still pull it off.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think in this case where it's like an Orianna against 4 tanks and the full Orianna combo does 20% of a tank's
Stone
life
plates go
bar.
up, and they're just like,
Yeah. If they didn't have Braum, I think the Twitch would have been able to shred them. But because they had Braum, I think the tank scaled just as well.
I also just think that Jace is like complete trash tier late game against tanks. Like Jace is actually awful, and I think that is a big part of it. Like, so while I agree, like maybe times are changing, tanks like, can be a bit stronger in some ways and stuff. Like, to me, it's a lot about composition, and I still don't feel like teams are adapting their pick ban towards these tank style comps, right? Like, we still don't see that much Trundle. Yes, people are playing Trundle, but like something like that, is so effective in the late game. Like if you have picks like this, if you have picks like Malzahar, if you have picks like Cassio, then I think it becomes so much easier to scale, because it's not just about like the tanks versus non-tanks. It's about, well, Jace is pretty crap late game. Like, Thresh, great. How much does your CC really do when you're only hitting front line? Like, I think there's different levels of effectiveness here.
Yeah, and this whole tank conversation is a little bit beside the point. KT beat Longzhu. The first game, they had a 4-tank team.
Mhm.
They won the second game more convincingly. But the main
Oh,
question
yeah.
I'd want to bring up would be, we have KT, Samsung, Longzhu, all sitting within 1 win of each other. SKT 2 wins below, but has all the championship points from spring.
Mhm.
Only 3 of these teams get to go to Worlds. So who's going to be on the
Can
outside
SKT
looking
still
in?
make Worlds? Ha ha ha
Ha
ha.
ha ha. Longzhu is actually really, really good. I love what Prey and Gorilla, I feel like, have done with that team with a little bit more time. BDD is putting up exceptional numbers. Their top laner has been super good. I'm a little bit questionable on the jungler right now after watching some of the plays he
Well,
pulled off in the KT series, but
I just feel like Score was so amazing, especially in that last game.
Cuz made a lot of mistakes though.
Yeah, he definitely did. But I'm also a little bit biased because I really like because I like used to like snipe him or not snipe him, but like stalk him, I guess is what it's
Because he was like
in,
the rank 1 Korean jungler in solo.
yeah. So I would always go there and like check his runes and like check the pass or
Yeah.
whatever that he's going for. But yeah, he definitely had a very rough game.
But that's the
second
question,
one.
right? Who of these teams isn't going to go? We know
So-
if KT beats SKT that they're in.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, like when you look at playoffs last last time around, like KT looked like crap going into it. KT then is smashing teams actually like through the gauntlet and stuff like. Regular
Talking
season
about
matters.
Last year, not last split.
Last year, I guess, going into Worlds and or even last split. I mean, KT like wasn't performing as well, and you don't always see regular season like the results don't always transfer over to playoffs. And I think that although SKT like yes they are kind of down and stuff, like I still find it almost impossible to bet against them getting into Worlds.
How can you say almost impossible when Longzhu, KT, and Samsung look as good as they do? So I think that is definitely possible
Yeah,
that SKT
because
do not make it to Worlds.
Essentially, what needs to happen for SKT not to make Worlds, I feel like, is if SKT's in final with KT Rollsters, they're in. But KT Rollster beats them, and then SKT is going to have the bottom seed in the gauntlet of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So then all you would need is for Longzhu or Samsung to beat KT in the final, and now SKT is in the regional qualifier, and then they'd lose to either Longzhu or Samsung, right? And it's essentially, can Longzhu or Samsung beat SKT in best of fives, and can that happen twice? And then they're not at Worlds. That's actually all that has to happen.
It can happen, but I just feel like every time people are counting SKT out, they
I don't-
come back.
We're not counting them out.
You're
You said
exaggerating.
It was
Yeah.
almost impossible to
Well,
imagine them not
my
going to
point
Worlds.
is-
and I'm saying it is very plausibly
Yes, of course
imaginable.
it is
to see them
possible.
not at
Of course it is
Worlds.
possible, but I'm saying almost impossible for me to bet against them. Meaning, I just think that they're
Yeah.
always going to be more likely to make it in than not. Like I would not put money against SKT just because of their history, just because of how successful they've been. I have faith that that is a team that will be able to like fix whatever issues, and we know how good they are in best of series, like historically. It's hard to say who's going to get knocked out. I mean, they're all really good teams, but I just at the end of the day, I'm always going to be betting on SKT.
Yeah.
That's fair.
If I had to predict a team to not make it, as much as I like how much they've improved, I would say Longzhu because of experience.
Mm.
And I think those games are so high pressure.
Ah,
And we saw them just lose to KT, who's one of the main competitors. They've beaten a ton of these teams, and they have experience with their bottom lane. Don't get me wrong. But that's a rookie jungler. BDD is not a rookie anymore, but he's still far less experienced
yeah.
than the mid laners on
I
KT, Samsung, and SKT. Like, the people that are on those other teams have been deep runs in Worlds
Yeah, that's
multiple
true.
times.
I've made a priority to watch like more Longzhu games than I have Samsung games, so that's
And it's
maybe why I'm leaning that
yeah,
way.
and when I
but
say that, it's Prey and Gorilla. It's not like those guys don't have a huge amount of deep run of world experience either. It's
I just want to see BDD and Khan have success. Because I don't know, it has that feeling of like the underdog, like new guys coming in, cleaning house, and this. I don't know. It just seems like it would be such a cool story for those guys to go. But so that's why maybe I would put slightly higher numbers on Samsung, not going. But
Let me guess.
that being said,
say SKT
I
is
could
gonna go.
I could risk just risk it on KT and be like, oh, they're so unpredictable. At any time, Pong could fall back into his slump that he started doing some crazy stuff.
I mean, KT does have a lot of ups and downs. I mean, yes, this split
that's why you
really
can
good.
you can always go like, look, they're
Because it was in the spring playoffs that they got 3-0'd by SKT. So it's like regular season, they look super shaky. They didn't look that good. And then they go into playoffs. It's like, they're doing it. They're dominant. The super team's coming together. They're gonna smash SKT in the 3-0. And like it's so hard to predict.
Also,
who's
is
gonna
Score
come out
ever
top.
going to win?
Yeah.
I
Can
mean,
you
it
win a
would be the
tournament?
ultimate meme if they just lose again. They didn't get to Worlds.
Yeah, he's actually so good though. All right, well, that's a lot of LCK
Yeah.
stuff.
None of
what
you
we
guys
got?
made a prediction. I said Longzhu. Anyway,
All
Yeah,
right,
we did.
I'll bet.
Or who's
say-
not? Yeah,
I'll
what's your
say
prediction for who's not going?
Samsung.
Samsung. Yeah.
double Samsung. Wow, you guys are crown haters.
Yeah.
MSG Co. acquires CLG is the next bit of news. So that's Madison Square Garden Company. The Dolan family owns the Knicks, all that stuff. So big money coming into CLG essentially.
And remember, what was it like 4 weeks ago or 4 episodes ago or something about the Immortals were bought by LA Live?
Mhm.
So, people started talking about the localized teams or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We technically have like LA Immortals right now and possibly,
New York CLG.
New York CLG?
I mean,
Question mark?
there's a lot of teams that are investing. I think it was like Boston like Garden that invested in Splice.
I mean,
believe, and
yeah,
there's, like, around the world,
there's
there
a ton
more
of
and
them.
more teams
Sacramento
are
Kings
happening.
invested in
Sports money
someone.
is coming in a big way, I think,
Yep.
especially with franchising around the corner. And I think this is just CLG arming up for that application process.
Yeah.
It's pretty much all it seems. I mean, FlyQuest, the Milwaukee Bucks basically own FlyQuest, right? We have
Milwaukee
have
FlyQuest.
I think I saw a list where it was like there's 32 sports teams now that are invested in esports teams, like professional sports
varying
teams.
degrees,
Yeah,
yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
It's not all like you're owning the team, but sometimes it's their managing group have some sort of money in it or whatever.
The interesting thing about this, from COG's perspective, is that they acquired a controlling stake in COG, which is pretty clear in the announcement. So if they wanted to, they could technically do whatever they want to the team. The messaging now is clearly that, like, oh yeah, George and the rest of COG is the experts in this space. So you'd think it would stay that way, but that always leaves that door open essentially if they wanted to make big changes.
I mean, it is a bit scary, I guess, like for CLG fans. And I know I saw a fair bit of discussion about that. Like, oh God, what if this happens? What if that happens? But I mean, you have to kind of give the benefit of the doubt to the investors that they know enough to know they don't know anything. You know what I mean? It's one of those situations where if you're investing into
They are self-aware.
yeah, like you're investing into this new market essentially. Well, not that new, but a new market for them. Like a lot of these people are not going to have much expertise. Yes, they have business savvy, and they should be able to use that to kind of help push the brand along and help push the team along. But I don't think it would be a scenario where they're gonna come in tomorrow and be like, Aframu, you're out, and this Jack guy, he seems to know what he's talking about. He's gonna be a new starting support.
Yeah, is he as high ranked as Consensual Clown? I think we're going to start him on COG next week.
Yeah, so I mean, you're giving them the benefit of the doubt, like until they show that they're trying to do something kind of crazy. I wouldn't think so. What I do think that you want controlling interest for is more running the business side of things, how you think it should be run, right? I think that an organization like that should be able to run, the social media side, the promotional side, like this sort of side of the business probably better than CLG can. At least you'd expect them to be able to with all the experience and the history that they have doing that. So that is something where I think they should have control, and perhaps that could actually really benefit CLG and their players. But you'd hope that like the micro stuff, the day-to-day on the individual teams will not really be touched.
Yeah, I mean, you always hear like rumors floating around about which teams are either paid better or have all this behind the scenes stuff that you're talking about and the operations and I love George and I love that organizations because I was there at literally the very beginning. But it's one of the names that comes up most when people are talking about all those rumors.
And at the end of the day, CLG fans should be happy about this because this like really strengthens your application for franchising, right? If you do not have outside money like this, I really don't think that the teams can come up with like 10 million or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Like they can't come up with these massive amounts of money without this outside investment. Like it's just not at that level yet. And that is why all these teams are getting outside investors. So it's preparation for franchising. And if you want CLG to stay around, you should be happy about this. Hopefully, it goes further than that, and it's beneficial for both sides. But step one is getting into the NA LCS franchising, and that's what CLG is prepping for. So,
Yeah.
it would be sad to see a team with that much history leave the league, and this is gonna.
I actually can't even imagine it.
Yeah,
Like,
neither
I
can
can't even imagine North American LCS without like some of these really big.
Yeah, if like
names.
C9 or TSM or CLG or like any the teams that have won
My
all the
heart.
championships, like if any of these kind of historic teams did not get in, that would be insane.
Sweet. MVP race. Talk about that, because I don't know how the voting is going to play out, since I was trying to jot down a quick list of candidates and I had a lot of them.
Yeah.
Tell me if any of these sound absolutely like they shouldn't be discussed. Jensen, Bjergsen, Doublelift, Xmithy, Ole, Lyra, Someday, Huhi, Afromu.
The only one, and I feel bad because I love him, but Afromu to me, I don't think has a legit chance of like really getting up there, simply because I feel like there's another person in his role that way more people are focused on as being successful. Like I hear more MVP talk about Smoothie than I do about Afromu, and I hear more about Ole than I do about the other two combined, right?
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
that would be the only one that I'm like, doesn't seem like he could really win it.
The only reason I had the CLG guys in there is I think it would be a little bit ridiculous, because CLG technically has a chance to finish first in the regular
Yeah.
season. To not even have an MVP candidate
Yeah.
would be a little strange.
Well,
but
I feel
agree
like
with you
Huhi
from
has
a
more of a
perception
chance.
perspective.
Personally.
Yeah.
Is what the votes are going to be.
I think if it's CLG, to me, it's who he is the
Yeah.
most likely.
That's what
If they can actually get first, like you're talking about, with having to sub out or not sub out, kick off, Dardoch and bring in Omar God. I feel like it's going to be off the back of who he not only roaming around and making big plays like that for the rest of the team that we're used to, but also being really strong in his own lane and kind of comping more around mid lane.
And the strength that he adds in pick and ban, right? Like this is a guy that was drawing Vel'Koz bans and Aurelion Sol bans and like these unique bans that you have to throw at CLG because no one else is playing these champions, and that's something that like I lend a lot of credence to, because I think that is very impressive that he's been able to pick up some of these different champions and succeed on them to the point where people just don't even want to deal with them. I mean, this is a guy that brought out Fiora mid this split. He's played Vel'Koz. He's played Aurelion Sol. Like he has a lot of depth, and he has been successful both individually and enabling his team.
That being said, if we're looking at mid laners, I feel like he would have to
MVP
smash.
candidates.
Yeah, I feel like he would
Yeah.
have to
How does
smash
he
this
go
last
above
week
Jensen
so hard.
and Bjergsen?
Yeah, like
he probably doesn't.
that's the thing. It's a kind of a similar thing to Afromu, right? Within your role, the
Yeah.
people within your role that you're fighting against, even for MVP status, like it is
Yeah.
tough competition.
Jensen
really is.
has 47 more kills than the next closest mid laner
Yeah.
in mid lane, in the same number of games as Huhi. Looking at this list, currently I see as many, probably more potential candidates than I've probably ever seen before. Last split, we thought it was going to be Bjergsen, Haunser, or Arrow.
Mhm.
And what ended up happening is Bjergsen and Haunser kind of stole votes from each other, and Arrow ended up winning.
Mhm.
This split, right?
Mhm.
If you're looking at Immortals MVP, are you going
Do your list. Do your long list.
We already just did the list.
Okay. Well. Okay. Keep going.
But with all of this, I'm very curious about how recency bias is going to kick in, because I think with how Jensen did last week and with their easy schedule and the stats he's going to have at the end of the split, I can see him actually getting a lot of the votes.
So, are you willing to narrow down? Because you say like there's a super big wide list. What would be your personal like narrowed down like front runners for this?
The four that I'm going to have to decide between are Jensen, Bjergsen, Xmithy, and Lyra.
Yeah, I would even mine narrowed down to just two, honestly, right now. We still have another week to play, but I'm most heavily debating between Lyra and Bjergsen, and that is kind of a philosophical type of MVP vote that we're going for.
That's
Debate.
your philosophical, who would I want on my team if I just wanted
like,
good?
You
Who's
know,
the first pick in the draft?
how much are we weighing in the team that you're on versus league wide? Actually, just like first pickable player.
So
that type
It's
of
interesting
thing.
because like the Lyra thing to me, like we talked about this before, right? And one of the things that one of the intangibles or whatever you want to call it, well, it's not really intangible, but one of the added things that Lyra
Can you
brings
touch it?
is people talk about the fact that he's actually like essentially coaching the team, right? That's what
Yeah.
Apollo was talking about. That's very valuable. But if you're talking first pick in the draft and you have a good coach,
that's what I wanted to dive
does
into.
that add? Is he more valuable because Violet is there as essentially just a life coach. Like, does he add the same if he's on team with Zix or Parth or guys like that?
I think that it always is a tremendous benefit to have an in-game leader for that type of stuff. We have seen teams that have very good coaches, send the squad in, after pick bans, and you've got your level 1 planned out, and you have like the way you want to play your lanes planned out. But that's the beauty about League of Legends, is there's so much decision making based on things that change, all these different factors as you're playing the game, that having someone like that in the game is so important right now. And why, like the previous question we talked a couple weeks ago about, like, oh, will we ever have a coach like talking to them the whole time during the game? Why I think that would like take away from that.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to your first pick in the draft point, though, because I know you follow basketball a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Would you just vote for LeBron James every year for MVP? Because he's always going to be the first pick in the draft. But he was 4th in MVP voting last year because James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard all put up such amazing numbers.
Yeah, and it comes back to, like, what type of vote are you going for, right? I mean, I am from the Bay Area, and so
every single year
I've been very focused on the Warriors for the last 5-10 years or whatever. So I've always been kind of like, LeBron has been my enemy, basically. So it would be very hard for me, to
suck it up, Kobe.
guys to vote for him. But I cannot deny, the caliber of player that he is.
But that's the same question, right? Because Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double, which had kind of never been done before, and he ended up winning the MVP, even though he had fewer wins on his team than any other MVP in the history did, because his stats were so good. And I think that's potentially where we're going with this Jensen split, because if he puts up another week where he gets 50 kills, which he might do against the competition they're playing, he's going to end with 270 kills and be 70 kills against the highest mid laner with a plus 10 CSD. But they're going to be a 3rd place team, and he's going to have, a lot of losses in there versus someone like Lyra or Xsmithy or Bjergsen, who may be a better draft pick because you look at the whole package and they have better teammates around them. But Jensen's going to have numbers that just absolutely demolish people. So at that point, it becomes a philosophical question.
That's what I think. It does get really hard, and that's why, like, it's never been specifically specified you have to vote for MVP based on this or that, right? Like, everyone has their own individual criteria that they are going to be going over, and I think that is what can make it so controversial. And also, I mean, notably absent from this list is the guy that there was a lot of drama about or community reaction about not getting it last time, was Haunter, right? And to you, he wasn't even on your notables.
I think there's a reason why.
Yeah, so you don't think that he's gonna get any votes?
What? You're putting words in my mouth.
It's a question.
Yeah. Any votes is extreme.
He'll get points.
Any votes is way too.
So you don't think he has a
extreme.
chance to win the MVP?
He's not gonna be top.
I don't think that his play has been as good as last year. But I think that it's pretty clearly, he had struggles, especially in the middle of the season. So if you're looking at that team, first things that come to your mind is Bjergsen and Doublelift, and it's been that way in the past. I think that last year. And I did actually vote for him.
Yeah.
When there was all that controversy last year, I think that was the closest he's ever been to getting it.
Yeah.
Because he really stepped up. Doublelift wasn't on the team, and his play was extremely good. He was, adding a lot to the shot calling as well. So you kind of get a bunch of parts to the package, and he was affecting other lanes as well. I don't think it's even a similar case, this split.
Yeah, I guess the only reason I think of him is maybe recency bias, because I don't think he had a stronger year, but I do think in the last couple of weeks he has had some pretty incredible games and has stood out more, and that's why it does get tough, I think, because it's hard to sometimes not remember the individual games. And when you talk about last split, I think it was one of the big discussions was, oh, hey, Arrow had like a bad end of the year kind of thing or whatever, right? Like his last couple games weren't as impressive.
His last week was bad.
Yeah, his last week was not very good. And I think that is one of the things that kind of raised a lot of the controversy about it, because people saw these games very recently. They remembered them. They weren't impressed by them. Whereas, Bjergsen in Spring Split had a lot of his struggles at the very start, and people had kind of not really remembered that. So, I mean, for you guys, I'm curious, how much does recent play compare to just like the entire split, right? Are you going 100% off the entire split? Or are you going to go through week by week by week and say, okay, he had a really bad performance here, he had a really bad performance here? Or is it like how you end?
It's definitely not just how you end.
Yeah.
It's a regular season award, so it encapsulates the whole regular season. I think there is always going to be a slightly higher weighting towards current form
Mhm.
and the way they progress throughout the
Even
season.
just subconsciously.
Subconsciously, but even factually, I put a slightly higher weight. But if you've been smashing the whole split and then you have a bad end of the split like Arrow did, I still put him second on my MVP ballot in the spring split, even though he had that bad last week. So it's a regular season award, and I see it that way. I don't see it as a
So
Yeah,
then,
week 9
it's
award.
it's clearly stated as it's supposed to be the entire
Yeah.
season. So you're
Yeah.
supposed to be waiting the entire season. But as he said, the way that you end, because it's higher pressure games basically near the end as
Mhm.
well, I think there's a legitimate reason for actively trying to put a little extra weight on there. And then there's also obviously the recency bias that
Mhm.
you're just going to, because it's so much fresher in your memory, even though you're going back and looking at the beginning of the season, it's difficult.
I guess the other question then I would have for you guys: how do you, when we're talking about Jensen, easy schedule at the end, if he's backing up all these kills, how do you weigh performances against the lower tier teams versus standout performances against the top teams, right? Is Jensen like getting 15 kills against TSM and winning that series
I
worth
mean-
worth much more to you than him doing that against an Echo Fox or something like that?
Of
Yes,
course that
yes.
is.
Strength of schedule
heck?
always matters. It always matters. And Jensen has had those big moment performances, and it's less important, but it doesn't mean it's irrelevant because you
Mhm.
had a good game against a bad team. Like it's all various levels of these things. Nothing is black and white in this.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that one's clear. All right. Do you want to actually talk about more of the awards, like possible awards of Rookie of the Split? That's a much quicker discussion, honestly, because we don't have
Mm.
very many rookies.
Yeah, that's something that I would like to talk about a bit.
Yeah, because we've been calling him Rookie of the Split Mike Young for like 6 weeks now.
Yeah.
But there are actually more rookies.
That
in
was
the split
so that
now.
started, by the way,
When he
because
was the only rookie.
exactly. See, that was because he was the only rookie. He is no longer the only rookie. And Niski specifically yesterday, I started to freak out in the games that he was playing when he was, flashing forward on his Lucian, his Talia. I forget who was with me
Last
casting it
weekend,
or
right?
whatever. Yes, last
Yeah.
weekend. This most recent one. I just think that his performance was incredible in that series. And since I took the week off before, I didn't have any evidence leading up to that.
Mhm.
So it made a very big impact on me that he was such a big part of how close they made their series. And this is versus TSM. You talk about
Yep.
Strength of
Mhm.
opponent. This to me is like the strongest or one of the strongest opponents that he could possibly have, and he really stepped up for me, especially judging rookies. That's huge.
Yeah, and I mean one of the reasons I brought up the strength of opponent thing is because I think that when we get to MVP time and rookie of the split time, there's so many just like blanket stats thrown around as reasons for someone should be voted over another.
Mhm.
But I think that I'm not trying to suggest that you guys don't look at it or whatever. My point is just to bring it up as a point of discussion because I think that a lot of times people don't take it into consideration, and I think it should be kind of given more priority. But Niski in general, I think that I'm feeling like more and more like maybe he should be the rookie of the split. And I think because of, yes, the fact that Mike Young was the only rookie for a time, because there's so much hype around him and they succeeded at Rift Rivals and he's a smart guy, had great interviews, all these things working towards him. Like the hype machine was in full effect for Mike Young.
Mhm.
And I think that whether or not he deserves to win it, he has a massive advantage going into the vote simply because the level of hype around him was so much bigger than either of these other guys, right? And I don't think that Omar God really would be able to win it, at least not in my opinion. But Niski, I think many people are overlooking. Like when I've seen some kind of polls and some discussions on Reddit and on Twitter and these sorts of things about, oh, who should be rookie of the split? And it's so massively weighted towards Mike Young that it's like most people are not even considering Niski. And I find that pretty surprising that people aren't necessarily kind of giving him the credit. Because when you look at some of the games that he's put forward as someone just coming in and on a team that is a playoff team and performances against some of these really good teams, like I think that he should be right up there and he should be certainly being considered and maybe even win.
He has to be considered. We only have a couple rookies, dude.
Yeah, I agree. Though it should actually be. I think people will need to put thought into it. I think Mike Young's going to win it, but I hope Niski gets a lot of votes.
Well, I 100% expect it to be Mike Young number 1 and Niski number 2.
Yeah,
with Omar God
I think that's.
Is that how you
I think
feel?
that's-
Is that what you feel is correct?
I still, and I talk about how impressed I was with Niski
Mhm.
in their
Mhm.
series versus TSM, and I witnessed it firsthand. But I still am leaning towards Mike Young
Yeah.
as far as my personal.
And-
I'm not casting my vote yet.
Yeah,
but
exactly. We
that's what
still
I'm
haven't
leaning
done the
towards.
full analysis on it. The things I look at it with Mike Young right now is there was a point where he had played half as many games as a lot of people, but had one 5 player of the game award still, and the next highest was 6.
Yeah.
He has the third most kills of all junglers despite playing 10 or 15 fewer games than the other ones. He's actually put up absurd numbers, and Niski has been a very good mid laner. He's actually probably upper half the North American LCS, but he's played only half the split. Mike Young's played 3/4, and I think Mike Young's been more impressive overall.
I want to reverse hipster you, Isaiah, with
Okay.
you talking about people, not giving Niski credit. There was a reason for the hype machine that started in the first place around Mike Young, right? And you're like, yes, he is going to have an advantage because of that, level of hype machine and all the memes that are flying around. And it's really fun to jump on that and their success at Rift Rivals. But there's a reason that all that started. And yes, it did kind of.
Because he was a beast.
It did snowball and it got to meme levels. But I still.
But is it
think he
still there?
deserves the credit.
That's kind of my question. He's really good.
Hype has slowed down.
He's really good. He deserved that hype, but the level of performances I think that people were expecting from the team and from him individually when that hype started has not been there, right? This is a team that everyone was coming back. Even talking to some of the players of the team, that they had super high expectations for themselves. Coming back from Rift Rivals, they were expecting to be a top 2, a top 3 team. They're at the bottom of the standings. And I think fans were expecting that as well after great performances against EU and in the weeks leading up to that. But it's been a while now since Rift Rivals, right? And they have been mostly just losing. Mike Young has had good individual performances, but I do think that it's basically my prediction is that going into, and this is not really, I don't even want to call it a prediction, whatever you want to say. So essentially I assume that Mike Young's going to win and it's not even going to be close, right? And I'm not trying to say that, this is a hot take. I think most of you guys are thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think that it should be a close race. I think Niski, I have not decided finally yet, but I do think that
I would
he's
not
really
hold
good.
it against you if you voted for Niski.
Yeah, but I don't think that there's any chance of him winning. And my point is that I think that's mostly based off of the attention that Mike Young has got, not undeservedly. But there's been no hype, no real discussion around Niski at the level that it has
I think
been
there has.
of Mike Young.
I think you're doing the.
We hyped him a lot
nobody
last
giving
week.
Niski credit, but there has been some.
In the community, you think
Compared
there's
to
been
Mike
a
Young,
comparable amount of
definitely.
discussion?
If
That's
you compare,
what I'm saying.
If you compare it to the Mike,
That's because that was a meme. That wasn't serious
That's what I'm
discussion.
saying. But I'm saying that affects people. That changes voters' minds.
All
That is
right.
going to be 100% in so many of the voters' minds, and I think that
Yes.
he auto wins off that.
True.
All right. And he also wins because he's been the rookie of the split. But we're on to patch 715 as it hits pro play. We talked a lot about patch 715 last, but as we normally do, now we're trying to say, since we've seen a little bit more, what actual changes will it have? One thing about this patch is I believe there were 26 champion balance changes, but the majority of them were fairly minor. I said that the boomerang blade change wasn't a huge thing last week.
Woo!
It got hotfix nerfed.
I said it
but
was
only by a little bit.
I said it was the biggest change, and it got hotfixed an hour after
So
our episode.
I have context on the hotfix.
They took 2/3 of the damage from the
I
buff off.
legitimately have.
And it still went up in win rate.
Yeah,
and
of
he's
course
like,
it went up in win
only
rate.
a little bit changed.
Okay, I have context on the hotfix. Initially,
Went from 30 to 10, only a little bit.
Let him go. Let him go.
yeah,
You have the floor, Jack.
yeah. So what was the buff act? What did it get reverted to?
It went from 30 to plus 30 to plus 10.
And then it went up 1%. So I was off by 2% on my magnitude. If we assume that it would have been 3% overall. So the reason they would do the hotfix, they have better hotfixing technology now, and they lock in these changes long before the meta starts to take shape. So essentially, when they saw Sivir was getting played in all of these tank comps and actually seen him pro before the buffs, they even before they would see data coming back, they said, okay, this is probably too much. Sivir doesn't need as much as we thought she did, and they preemptively hotfixed it. But yeah, it was a pretty big buff. That's it.
I have nothing to say to you. You can go check the tapes, and that's my whole argument on the last one.
Yeah.
I think we should move on to how this one is actually going to affect pro play. Because the other thing that I was hyped about, or not even, or it was a kind of fingers crossed moment, basically, of like, what is this going to have as far as when it gets to pro play, is I'm still really hoping for the top laners that have been playing Akali, in the past, for the past couple months. And whenever you turn on their streams and stuff, they're, solo queue stomping with Akali. I am hoping that she finds her way into the league here on 7/15 because she gets another little, round of buffs here. But I'm gonna stay cautiously optimistic, I guess, about that possibility because.
Here's my 3 that I think are going to make it in.
Okay.
Sivir.
Is Akali one of them?
Sarah's one of them. I think
Sivir's already been in.
She'll make it in more. She's going up. And then Azir and TF are the 2 that I feel like have gotten enough of tiny little nudges. Move speed on TF is a really big deal. Not to mention just the fact that Talia is often getting banned now. If you want that side lane pressure, I think TF can bring it to you. And then Azir, we, top of the show, had the conversation about how can you beat a wall of tanks, Azir. He hits all of them at once, and he kills them all.
And he makes his own wall, and you
And
can't
then
get through it.
back, and then the wall of tanks moves backwards.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say the biggest change for me is not an addition, but maybe like a takeaway. I think Zach went down a lot in win rate. Like I know the initial win rate change was like he went down like 6.5%, something massive like that. So I could certainly see Zach maybe not needing to be like that 100% type pick man presence that he is, or I don't know if he's exactly 100%, but he's very, very heavily prioritized, and that can open up for I think some of these other junglers and for some more things to come in. And we did see Kayn, like assassin form, get a lot stronger, and we saw some showing of this in LCS and in some other regions. So perhaps we get to see more assassin Kayn, and maybe he can fit in more with Zach kind of falling off.
Yeah, on Kayn, I think if we see him in pro jungle, I still think it's going to be red Kayn, but I think we're going to see a lot more of him this split. The experienced win rate on that guy is kind of through the roof. I see a bunch of pro junglers like tweeting about it or see it in their match history, kind of spamming games on him. And I do see a lot of pro viability there. Contracts did show the way a little bit of how oppressive he could be early game, and pro teams are still really good at snowballing. So I think we'll see Kayn, but I don't actually think the buff will do much to jungle Kayn.
I think it's mostly the more time. The guys have had more time playing the champion, right? Contracts is not going to stop playing this champion. He already had success with it, and I think that you're right. More people are going to pick it up because one of the first things I look to for pro viability is mobility, especially for junglers. And this guy just has it in spades. It's absolutely insane, the mobility on him. So I definitely think you're right with that one. What was the other one that you said? Oh, Twisted Fate. So
yeah,
I really want that to happen because I honestly am getting a little bit tired of 5-on-5 team comps are basically the highest percentage way to go. You still can, try and split push, or you still can, have this oddball, like early game snowball. But I just feel like there's so much more risk with any strategy that is not built for a 5-on-5 in the mid game. Fight them 5-on-5, have this strong team comp to be able to take dragons and stuff like that. I just feel like there's such an advantage right now to that because tank items are strong, tank champions are strong, and those excel in 5-on-5 fights. I would love if Twisted Fate, 5 mood speed was enough to push him over the edge. I don't think it's like enough, but I really hope that we at least see him sparingly, right?
So are you hoping that then diminishes the amount of 5-5 type stuff that we see?
I want to see some split pushing back in it, or some siege, some strategic variation, basically. I actually really enjoy hard engage, and I was super happy with all the supports moving in that direction. I don't want the supports, the junglers, the top laners, like everybody to move that direction. So then we see kind of an overwhelming amount of these. But I have actually become a little bit bored in Champ Select recently. Because I'm like,
Maokai first pick.
yeah, okay, what's the next best, tank or, team fighting that we can get, Kalista priority? That's, it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons that the 5-5 stuff is so good and like all these tanks are so popular right now is that it's like we're seeing game time sped up. Tanks allow you to close games so fast. And, for me, it's like less about the fact that, if TF can work in a side lane split pushing or if you're whoever, because I think they still can, it's more about the fact that when you have these 3-man tank front lines, you can just dive the 4-man squad and just kill them and then end the game, right? And that's the biggest thing that shuts it down. So to me, it's more adjustments that need to be made around the 4-man squad and less about the split pusher. Because if you have, say Sivir and Zyra and I don't know, like whatever the ideal kind of disengage, survive, wave clear squad
Seer?
is. Yeah, sure, Azir. If you can pull off these sorts of things, then I think it allows you to split push more. Because like I personally don't think that it's about a TF cannot be successful or if Fiora cannot be successful individually. It's just while they're split pushing, while they're creating this pressure, the other team just 5-mans you and just dives you because you have tanks who can tank the turrets and
But
engage.
I do want more options for my split pusher. Right now, I'm like, okay, Camille's in a good spot, but Fiora got nerfed really hard. And if I do want my mid laner to be some member of the 4-man squad that's holding, which a lot of the times you do, then you kind of want like more top lane split pushing options, which are kind of there. I feel like there could be more versatility and more
Jax
options.
is kind of there. The interesting thing
is,
there's stuff like Kled that is a good split pusher, but he's actually used because he collapses faster than the other guy who's matching his split push. So it's just another excuse for 5-manning in the mid lane when the other team doesn't have 5. I think with this patch, and also a lot of the mid lane changes slated for patch 7.16, we're going to see some of that change up. So I'm pretty excited for it.
I really am waiting for Trundle top though. I actually think he's one of the guys. Pardon?
We've seen.
We haven't seen a lot.
Okay, you want to see more Trundle all the time, shredding every single tank.
Yeah, because he's actually like since they changed Chomp to work on turrets, it's actually crazy how fast you kill a turret if you do get left alone. So his actual turret killing speed is very, very high now, and he's pretty effective in team fights.
Yeah, I think anytime we see tanks, everyone's like, okay, where is Trundle? But then people also say champions like Trundle, and I don't think there are a lot of champions like Trundle.
Yeah,
when people
champions with a pillar that can shred your armor and MR.
Yeah, everyone's always like, champions like Trundle, and I'm like, there is one Trundle. Nobody else can shred, 30% of your armor, magic resist, and health and stuff like that. I also wanted to touch back on your thing about the 4-man squad, because I think that's a good point. And something adding to that is Righteous Glory and Gargoyle Stoneplate right now. I think those are just so good for diving. So that just kind of
Righteous Glory is my favorite tank jungle item. And that kind of tangents us to the next mini topic here. There was a thread on Reddit earlier that Tarzan apparently made. I just learned that this morning when I talked to you about it, Isaac.
I believe it's Tarzan.
Jungle is the worst role ever was the title of the thread. And
is that the title?
I think so.
I think Jungle is in
a terrible spot right now. I wrote Jungle is the worst role ever.
Fake news.
Yeah, fake news. But I completely disagree. I feel like Jungle right now is in one of its strongest points than it has been, like from a season perspective, in the last 4 or 5 years. I feel like you're consistently able to level or like pace level with your solo lanes. If you're going tank jungle, you get just as tanky as top laners with a lower gold threshold. Objective control is super important. You get to influence all the lanes. I think it's one of the most influential lanes in the game.
So the thread itself is about mostly it's focused on catch-up experience and how invading does not matter. Where I think his argument falls through to me is, I mean, in the post he's talking about, when you're invading and you're just smashing the other guy, but all their lanes are winning, then you can't win. And it's like, well, of course, all their lanes are winning.
It's a 5-man game.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a 1v1 game. And I mean, his issue and a lot of, I think, people's issue. So to me, I don't think this should be, Jungle is in a terrible spot. It should be about the fact that he doesn't like playing the champions that are really strong right now. Because I think that, these tanky junglers, more supportive style junglers are really, really strong. And people are frustrated that, playing Nidalee and invading and killing off the jungler or taking away these camps doesn't always matter because of catch-up experience and because tanks can be very efficient with a lower amount of gold.
Yeah, so I am going to go in between you and Tarzan, because I think that you are also...
Tank junglers are the best spot
I
ever.
think that you are...
This is coming from Nunu is life.
Yeah. That was forced upon me. I did not choose the Nunu life.
The Nunu life chose you.
It chose me. I think that Jat is extreme to the other end of the spectrum compared to Tarzan. So there are problems with Tarzan's argument, but there are also merits to it.
But name a time when jungling was stronger between now and 2014.
Last season,
like a year.
Yeah, I think it's last season.
Split. So you
2017
here's my reason. I'll give my reasoning for it. You have always been a tank jungler, a farming oriented jungler.
Even at the start of the split when it was like Kazakh and stuff running around, that was insane.
So I'm talking about carry
that's
junglers.
Still this season.
Were
but he's not talking about this season. He's talking about right now.
All right.
So it's different patches, right? So I think he's talking patch by patch. You're talking season by season.
Yeah.
I would maybe agree if you're talking
This
season
patch
as
is
a
still
whole.
strong. It's not the strongest it's been in years.
But I
'cause it was
still
stronger
think
in
it's
spring.
super strong. I agree with you. I just think it's a
Okay.
playstyle thing. If you hate playing, you know, your
Colors.
Maokais and stuff. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Where was I?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. In between you and Tarzan,
Best, worst.
because I do. It is super nice right now. You know, 4 tank junglers who are trying to get through the early phase and get to this team fighting. But I do see a lot of the points that he's making. I think he's all over the place because, as you said, he's literally like, one of his big points is that the jungle doesn't have a big effect in the game. And he talks specifically only about him versus the enemy jungler. And he's like, I can't keep this guy, so heavily down in levels. I think that's heavily influenced by Tarzan. He has to recreate his account so many times that he's always leveling up.
Okay.
So if you're constantly leveling up a new account and you're a challenger player and you're playing through like gold or platinum or whatever on your way up, you feel like you should be able to win 100% of your games. And yes, he is smashing these people and he has big leads on these people. He wants his big leads to be even bigger. And so his argument kind of seems to take a different turn there. And that's where they get on all this experience stuff, which is different from the title, I think.
Yeah.
At first he's like, jungle's in a terrible spot. Then he's like, experience catch up is the whole reason. And he starts only talking about the 1v1s. Go ahead.
I was just going to talk about experience catch up.
Okay, because experience catch up, I think is an interesting topic. Because it definitely does have a very big effect right now. Part of the reason that the designers talked about going when they first made that change was because they didn't want the discrepancy to be as big as it is. People are kind of discounting the gold difference, which is very big, and like that's an amount of power. So then that compounded with like 3 level plus differences actually, you can't really do anything, right? Coming back from that.
And I want to talk about exactly how the experience catch up works because I feel like people often over exaggerate how much experience you get.
Yeah.
If you are lower level than the jungle camp that spawned, then you get a bonus amount of experience. But the catch up experience is linear in a sense. For every level below you are, you get 30 more experience towards it. But towards some of the later levels, you need 1,000 experience to get a level sometimes, or 500 experience in earlier levels, plus the gold doesn't equalize. So I didn't like the world where a Lee Sin would get off an early gank and kill you and then was always 2 or 3 levels ahead of you. I like a certain level of catch-up experience in the game.
There also is catch-up experience for just champions in the game. So supports also get catch-up experience. It's not just the jungle
That's
one.
based on kills and assists. So if you're then getting kills and assists as a lower level against higher levels, you get a generous amount of catch-up experience. But at the same time, if you're 5 levels above a guy and he's killing you, then the game's going to swing back in some way.
Well, and that's why I think it's more focused on is like reading this quote from it. If a jungle Nidalee is playing versus Maokai, does everything in her power to invade him, take golden experience. It will do nothing in the long run if Maokai has winning lanes as he itemizes tank supports. But the point is then, yes, of course the Maokai's behind. But if the Maokai's team is winning team fights, that's where I think he's seeing this slingshot in the experience, and that's why he's getting super frustrated. But one of the things that I think this argument super overlooks is even if they catch up in experience because the Maokai's able to group and win team fights because he has winning lanes or whatever, you don't get catch up gold. You don't get more gold when
you get kills free bounties.
I'm talking about from jungle camps and stuff, right? Like you're not just getting some of the pictures in his examples, it's like a guy who's like 0-13 and he's like 13, so 1-14 versus 13-7 or whatever. So even if they're around the same level, it's not like they have the same items. It's not like they become as powerful as you.
I do again see where the arguments are coming for, because a lot of people actually are feeling the same way, and I kind of want to give a little bit less exaggerated basically take on how it is right now. Again, if I'm going back to, he has to like remake his accounts a lot and he's smurfing, so he's almost always smashing X person. If I have to make 3 good plays better than the other jungler, and I have like a level advantage or something like that, and then he makes like, you have to make maybe 8 or something like that to get a 2-level advantage. 2-level advantages are actually pretty rare right now.
And then it swings back in 2 plays.
It's usually due to like catch-up experience, but also due to the other person, farming the jungle more and ganking less, and you like spending more time for that. Now, frustrating thing can come if I make 6 good plays and then not even me, but one of my teammates makes 1 bad play. That's a huge amount of my work undone to catch them up. And they maybe catch up like 4 of those good plays for literally just one of, my teammates making a mistake. I have to be so consistent. I make good play. I make good gank. I make good play. I get so I work so hard to earn my like 1.5 or 2 level advantage. And there is a lot of gold that goes along with that, by the way. But then, a large portion of that can be given up by a single mistake. And I think that was intentional from the designers because they wanted comebacks to be a possibility and not be hopeless. It shouldn't be, 1-to-1 as far as, oh, I made 2 good ganks, you made 1 good, so I'm, that level.
That I think is a little bit of an extreme example, but I think as far as the amount of hidden information in the game, it's something most people don't realize when they have a lead, how important it is that you don't die with your lead because of the slingshot mechanics that kind of exist in that. And that's something most people just don't even consider. So if you're playing around in gold or plat games, that's going to happen a lot more than it would in high diamond.
To me, it's also I think that exists in every role. That's not just a jungle thing, right? Like if I'm playing top and I'm playing like it's more almost an argument of scaling, right? If I'm playing a tank and I'm like bullying this Fiora or whatever all lane or something, and then she TP's bot and gets 2 kills, even though I like said she had TP and pinged them back and whatever, right? Then it feels like all your work is gone because you're playing then against a champion that outscales you and is getting more quickly to that level. So to me, that exists in all roles. If I'm playing Ezreal bot against a Jinx and then the Jinx,
it's just how scaling works
exactly
in the game. Anyway, accept your point that it can definitely be frustrating for some people. I still think jungling is really strong right now, especially QMax Rammus. But we're going to move on to the NA LCS. It's the last week of the NA LCS, and even though playoffs are decided, playoff buys and seeding have not been. Essentially, even though CLG is 1 win out of getting a playoff bye, they got a very hard schedule to play Team Dignitas and TSM. You want to talk about their chances of getting a playoff bye first before we start talking about who's going to get 3rd seed?
Sure. I mean, I honestly don't think that they have looked good enough with Omar God. I'm kind of expecting CLG to go 0-2 this week. I don't think that they're going to get the bye. I think that their schedule is very tough. And I would still have been probably favoring TSM, even if CLG was steady all year long, but they're not, and they're bringing in a new player. And I don't think that Omar God is meshed with the team enough and that they're at a level as a team that they can consistently compete with these teams.
That Phoenix 1 series CLG played last week was so weird because the first game, I saw them just smash Phoenix 1. One mistake by Mike Young in the jungle, and they pushed him back. They dove top lane. They took the turret. They did everything super crisp, and then they won quickly. It was like, man, this whole Omar God thing's really working out. They're playing so well as a team. Then they just lose the next 2 games. And it's still a level of inconsistency, so I think I tend to agree with you that I'm not willing to say they can even win a game next week. I think they probably should be underdogs against Team Dignitas and TSM. Just because of that loss to Phoenix 1, I think is pretty damning.
Man, it is definitely close. You talk about a single mistake, making that much of a difference between these teams right now. And even though we're like, yeah, TSM versus, that's probably the harder opponent and that's probably the more lopsided one. They have been pretty open about the struggles with, adapting to the new meta and actually just literally playing poorly. I watched the TSM whatever series is called or whatever last night.
Legends. It's been the same title for 3 years.
Yeah, sure. I'll call them Legends. There we go. They're like, oh, like couldn't even. It wasn't even a systemic problem. It was just like, oh, we're playing poorly, and they kind of came to that conclusion for some of them. So, like, just how the team is playing on the day is definitely going to have a high impact, but also like changing. This is now 7:15, which actually does have substantial changes. And if they're having trouble like catching up, CLG typically one of the strengths that we like to mention with them is Ziggs and Afromu, and like they love theory crafting. This is one of the teams that loves like theory crafting new patches the most, I think. So they usually will come out of the gate with at least one little curveball, and that may be enough in a best of 3, may not, and they might go 2 as you're talking about because working with Omar, he's still catching up.
I also think another team that has been adapting very well is Dignitas, who they also have to play. Dignitas is 5-1 in their last 6, only the loss to Cloud9. I mean, they haven't looked perfect, but they have been very, very good and are very clearly trending upwards pretty heavily. A lot of people are talking about them as maybe really being in the top 3 again, as we had been kind of earlier in the season. So I just think it's such a tough spot for CLG, and it's rough when they had such a successful split after last split being much more of a struggle, and then it feels like maybe kind of losing some of that momentum towards the end because of some of the roster struggles that they've had.
On Team Dignitas, I wonder if they can sustain this recent surge, because I agree with you that they adapted super quickly. I feel like they were the first ones to really willingly just first pick Maokai, throw him anywhere.
Even Nunu and all that.
And the Nunu was really good. They jumped on Cinderhawk before anyone else. But even the AD carry and support picks, getting Janna in there really early, going to the Ancient Coin supports almost immediately.
First for Sivir too, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So innovation only helps you as long as you're the only one doing it, if it's good. And I feel like people have had time to do exactly what Dignitas has done since I think they had it right. So I wonder if they can sustain that success when they don't have the team comp or the theory craft advantage over the other team. Yes, there's going to be a lot of change in 715 and 716, but if they do fall off, I think it's because that advantage would no longer be there, and then we get to see more of what Team Dignitas was when they were losing potentially. So that's why I'm not completely sold on them sustaining their success.
So are you of the opinion basically that they're smarter, not necessarily more talented individually, like that if another team uses the same strats, they just do it better?
Right. On 714, I said they adapted better than everyone else, and that gave them a leg up, which makes it harder for me to judge. So I don't think they are as good as they looked on 714. I'm not saying that's why they won.
A tremendous amount of whether they push up to that next level, then the upper echelon, basically, like you're talking about, and get back to top 3 contender, it depends on Keen for me, because I am sold on the new bottom lane. I love it. They're absolutely a huge upgrade and doing a bunch of wonderful things there. Someday is tremendous, and Shrimp is fully embracing. I think he's the first one all over the new patches and stuff, because Saint also loves tank junglers. So I think that's all good. But so Keen being successful, and Keen all this Cassiopeia play and him looking good, to me is the part that I'm a little bit unsure of if he's going to keep it up or not. With Azir coming back, maybe he steps into that. So I'm so excited to see if he's able to remain at this level or not. And I think that whether them pushing up to the next level kind of depends on him.
Yeah.
The other thing we should probably talk about is the teams at the bottom, right? Like, who do you guys think are going to be able to kind of escape, right? It's FlyQuest P1. FlyQuest
I like it.
Escape, man. FlyQuest,
who will win the
P1,
Hunger Games?
TL. Those are the teams that are right at the bottom right now. Echo Fox is a game up. They have 5 wins. They're 5-11. Who do you guys see as the teams that are going to end in the last 2
spots? The 20-man league team versus the other 20-man league team. Who stubs are going to...
So hard. So the other wrinkle to this is that Phoenix 1 and FlyQuest still carry over championship points. So
and
it is
lose
still
them if you go to promo relegation.
Possible for FlyQuest to make Worlds. Phoenix 1 would almost certainly be in the regional qualifier if they don't get relegated. So the team that I want to see succeed right now is Phoenix 1, but they played
I knew it wasn't going to be FlyQuest. Chad don't like
and then
them.
They play FlyQuest.
And then they play FlyQuest.
Succeed. There you go.
So we get to see that. But even if FlyQuest wins, it's pretty unlikely that they actually can get in the regional qualifier. I think it would require Team Dignitas to win the split, just with the way the points end up working out. And I feel bad for Phoenix 1, man. They were so happy after Rift Rivals. They're going to come back, and then they fall to last place. I still think Mike Young is a good story, and they've moved around so many players. I want to see them find something that works. But at the same time, that's what everyone's been doing, right? Team Liquid's done the same thing. Phoenix 1's done the same thing. I think Phoenix 1, with their win last week over CLG, should be able to beat FlyQuest, and that's potentially the game that pushes someone between 8th and 9th.
FlyQuest does have the easiest schedule out of those 3 teams, though. They play Liquid, and they play Phoenix 1. So they essentially have their fate in their hands, because they play those 2 teams that are at the bottom and easiest strength of schedule, whereas P1 has to play TSM and Liquid has to play Dignitas. So those 2 teams have some pretty tough games. I mean, just because of schedule, I kind of give FlyQuest an edge there. But it's tough to know, and I also don't know yet if Mickey is going to be eligible to play. I'm not sure if he actually he is here.
Even gonna be good if he does.
There you go. So, I mean, how are you seeing it, Kobe?
That one is so much about the rotating subs, right, that are coming in and out for me. So it's It's pretty hard. My initial reaction is that I do feel like Phoenix One, maybe playing probably the strongest of them and might be the one to claw their way out. But as you said, FlyQuest, I'm kind of behind as far as this behind them as far as the schedule. So it's and also they do have Wild Turtle, and they have all these super experienced guys and high known for making these late season gauntlet runs and stuff like this. It's I guess the one I don't have much faith in is
No one's even mentioned Liquid.
yeah the
Yeah.
team Liquid, and there's
Tiebreakers
probably a
matter
reason.
as well. And the way our tiebreaker rules work is it's match record obviously first, head-to-head second, and then game record third before anything else. So Team Liquid has the worst game record. They only have 11 wins on the split. FlyQuest has 13, Phoenix One has 15, and Echo Fox has 16. So I think a lot of this, as much as these teams lose, and I actually have reasons to like every single one of these teams. I like a lot of the players and what they're doing as orgs. So you have to just be strictly analytical when it comes down to this. Echo Fox already has an extra win, even if their schedule is harder, right? And they have the most normal wins. So they're probably going to be able to finish 8th. And then it's really going to come down to who can win between Phoenix One and FlyQuest.
Yeah, I think that matchup or that actual match is going to be super hype.
Because if Phoenix One beats FlyQuest, then I don't even remember what happened in the first one. Their head-to-head would be even, and they'd have a better game score.
It's also pretty crazy. I believe this is the first time that Turtle won't have made playoffs, period, right? And it's like he has always been on such good teams, and there was a lot of excitement with him coming into FlyQuest and now fighting to avoid relegation for the first time ever. So that has got to be a different experience, I think.
Nah,
for
it's the
Turtle.
same, bro.
Just another form of playoffs.
All right, Twitter questions?
Baby playoffs.
Let's get it.
All right, first Twitter question comes from Liam McGee 19. He says, do you think with SKT's slump in LCK, the other regions/teams have a chance of winning Worlds finally?
Are you saying there's a chance?
Did you say LCK slump or SKT slump?
He said SKT's slump in LCK.
Yeah, only because SKT has won 3 of the last 4 world championships. The thing is, when SKT slumped, Samsung smashed everyone and had one of the most dominant world championships ever. So I don't think SKT's slump really has anything to do with other teams or other regions having a chance of winning Worlds.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance, but I don't think SKT's slump has anything to do with
Little
that
baby
chance.
chance.
I think there's more of a chance of other teams from LCK winning, but yeah, probably not really other regions. I don't have much hope on that one. But next question from Forecast Winter. Why are teams still early picking Gen in the tank meta? Why struggle in tank meta at all? Are big tanks really that novel?
This was a perplexing one.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it had to do with not really figuring out the meta and having faith that you'd be able to beat the clock on tanks. Because Lethality Jhin is really good when he's hitting the targets he wants to hit, and also before tanks can get tank items. So I think when teams do early pick Jhin in the tank meta, they're doing a pick composition, they want early laning strength, and they're hoping to get tank shredding from another role if they're smart. So I think now, if you're doing something like Jhin Azir, I think that's fine to do against tanks because Jhin can still kill the others.
Yeah, I do think that actually that's a really good example just because the tanks are then going to want to build more MR for the Azir, who's a huge threat, and that might open up Jhin a little bit more later. But I do think that Jhin has already started to drop off as far as the priority and will continue to do so. The silver buffs are coming in. She's going to be, high priority. Kalista will remain high priority.
Huge.
So, and Tristana has always been there right with Kalista, even almost on the same level, being traded back and forth. So I do think that's the way that it already was trending away from Jhin and probably will continue to.
Yeah, I pretty much disagree with Jet, though. I think it's about his playmaking and stuff in lane, and I do think he still can pair well with tank shredders from other roles.
Yeah. Plus, teams were just silly when they were picking them into tank teams
And it's
without tank
comfort,
shredding.
right? It's comfort. That's, I think, a big reason why people pick a lot of stuff when it doesn't necessarily make sense. They're so used to picking it.
Yeah. Grant Postma, our last Twitter question. Looking at imports, how drastic of a mechanical difference does there have to be to justify the language barrier?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Because
This is one that teams have changed their mind on recently. Some teams, at least.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it has to be extremely high. But then so many other factors come into it because you talk about just language barrier, like how deep does that go? Is it also relationship with the rest of the team? Like, there's so much that goes along with that, depending on the degree that this barrier exists. If it's actually a barrier and like they're coming in knowing none of the other language that the other people are speaking, then I don't think you can actually justify it at all.
Yeah. To me, it has to be fairly big, but I do think other factors are really big as well. I think how, like, how committed the player is to actually learning the language and to actually really wanting to play in the NA LCS, not just looking for a payday. Like that is
Yeah.
really, really big. If someone is a fair bit better, but they just seem to want to pay out, they're not really super interested, then I don't think it's worth it at all. But if you get some of the guys who clearly want to live in North America, want to adapt, want to fit into the team and the culture, then that can be worth it, because then that's an investment for the future.
And one of the reasons why I just think it's not worth it if that barrier is big is because there's so many options where a lot of these foreign players already speak a little bit of English. There are options where you can get, an extremely good Korean player that either has played in another region already or, is, super willing, like Azael was talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I think imports need to be able to speak a little bit of English, unless you're Faker. If Faker spoke no English, I would import him. That's my bar.
Just speak to me in pings, I'm good.
Yeah. And you look at LPL games, this will be the final thing I say on this topic. A lot of those guys don't communicate that well. That's why LPL games have so many more pings than other games, because some regions have been okay with that, and you can almost tell how well they communicate by how many smart pings they use.
Interesting little, I don't want to extend this question too long, but with the meta trending more towards team fights, do you think that it becomes a little bit less important that, we won't have as many split push scenarios calling for TPs and trading objectives and stuff like that? Or, is that effect pretty small?
I think the effect is pretty small, because I still think that you have to be like instantaneously ready to go for the same targets, and in tense situations that seems
you don't need to know much English to understand.
Yeah.
Shako, Azir.
I mean, I guess, but I do think that there's like, if you're trying to say in a really tense, quick situation, if this person uses this ability, I'm going to go. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be able to really be on the same page. And if you're not ready for me to flash twisted advance as soon as the Twitch, like, I don't know,
go,
goes to its sponge or whatever.
Yeah.
I think being able to specify exactly what you want in an instant is still really hard. So even though it's a less complicated situation overall, I still think it's just as important.
Yeah. Back in the Stone Age, when I was playing, I would do a lot of that pre-fight communication, where you're actually trying to map out everything that needs to happen in a winning fight. And sure, you like this ideal world where everyone can just be on the same page, but you need to change the way you play fights throughout the game. Going all the way back to the very start of the episode, Mata changed the way he used Braum Shield in that game later in KT versus Longzhu, and it added to victory. If he's an import, the rest of the team wouldn't have been on the same page about them doing that, and they wouldn't have played the game right. So I think we're done.
That is. I think that's going to do it for this week on The Dive. You can check us out on YouTube or any of the other podcast platforms. And I've been told a rather soothing to listen to while you're in queue.
You were told that.
I was told that. I mean, it's right here.
Keep the Twitter questions coming. @RideChat, @RideKobe, @RideAzael. We try and get as many as possible. Thank you for sending them in. They always lead good conversations. Also, final week of the NA LCS that we just talked about kicks off Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. 2 huge matchups. NB takes on Immortals, and CLG clashes with Dignitas. Gonna be hype.